Welcome to Lazy Reviews. My name is Arvid, and I spent much of my spare time watching movies. And I therefore decided to give you my recommendations for which movies to watch and which ones to stay away from, so you don't waste as much time of your life as I have watching these terrible films. Today's episode is going to be a bit different, as instead of talking about a movie franchise, I'll instead talk about actor, director, writer, and producer Greg Sestero. Greg Sestero is most famous for his role as Mark in the terrible masterpiece The Room from 2003, and also for writing the book The Disaster Artist that the movie The Disaster Artist is based on. And until recently, it was the only one of his movies I'd seen, but that changed when I recently had the opportunity to watch The Room in my local cinema alongside his newest movie as of recording, Miraclevalley. And it was presented by Greg Sestero. So there were opportunities to ask him all the questions we wanted, mostly about Miraclevalley, but of course anything you really wanted to hear. And for that reason, I decided to actually watch all his movies, all the ones I could watch anyway. And his first credited role is actually what led me to do this project in the first place, because his first credited role is in Retro Puppet Master, the 7th installment of the Puppet Master series. And I realized that I didn't just want to start with the 7th one, so I watched the first 6 ones to get to the 7th one, which then made me realize I should really keep track of all the movies I watch, especially movie franchises, and which movies to watch and which ones not to watch. So I made an Excel arc where I rated all the ones on an F to S tier, and showing that to a friend, she instead recommended me to, or she said, well, why don't you make a podcast instead? And I'm not sure if she was even serious, but here I am because I realized, yeah, actually, that was not a bad idea, because the vast majority of movie franchises, of the movies in movie franchises, are garbage, so it's best to know which ones to watch and which ones not to, in my opinion. People can disagree, sure, fine. Anyway, so yes, his first credited role is in Retro Puppet Master, and it goes on from there. And because I already talked about Retro Puppet Master from 1999, I won't talk much about it here. I will quickly add that it's not a good movie. It's at that point the second worst installment in the series. The 6th movie was worse in my opinion, but the 7th one was terrible. But it had some entertaining elements, such as Greg Sestero having a really bad French accent, and some of the French people having a very Scandinavian accent, and introducing all these weird characters that are tied to ancient mummies and gods. And it's not a good movie. It's really weird, but Greg Sestero is playing the lead in that movie, which I actually think is his only lead in any movie he's ever been in, at least of the ones I've been able to see. So in that way, it's a bit crazy to think that he started his career, his real career. He had a few uncredited roles before this, but he started his real career as a lead actor, and it just kind of went all downhill from there. I'm not going to talk too much about his relationship with Tommy Wiseau, who's the one who made The Room and arguably made them both famous, but for the wrong reasons. But then again, the right reasons, because The Room has made back its money. So overall, without The Room, there would be no future career for Greg Sestero or Tommy Wiseau. But it also put them in this box that they are renowned for being, terribly good, or so bad they're good, or whichever way you want to phrase it. Which, when it comes to Greg Sestero, it's not completely fair. I will talk a bit about it when we talk about these movies. Just very briefly, he's born in 1978, American born, California raised, born and raised, and it would appear that he was really into acting and writing and possibly also directing movies from a very early age, from at least what I could find. But ended up more, especially in his early years, working as a model, because he's a good-looking guy and his looks might sometimes outweigh his talent. And I hope that I'm not offending anyone by saying this, but yes, so that's how he really started his career. And I've heard a lot of interviews with him. I've seen him now live in person. He seems like an absolutely lovely guy. So I hope if he ever comes across this, well, then I should address you. If you ever come across this, I hope you take this in good faith. I'm just an idiot talking about movies I watch. So whatever I say, positive or negative, it's not meant to be an attack on you as a person. I really think You are a lovely person from what I can tell, and in that way, I actually think that Hollywood need more people like you or like Greg Sestero. I don't want to be a narcissist thinking that he will actually listen to this. So, but just in case I did have to, I felt like obliged to say that. So yes, anyway, he seems like a great guy. Already talked about Retro Puppet Master. So let's move on to his second movie, which actually came out the year after. It's a short film, but I still counted it in, and it's a documentary. It's called Homeless in America, also produced and directed by Tommy Wiseau, with Greg Sestero being an executive producer. And I've seen it credited that he is also in it, but from what I could tell, he's not the interviewer. The interviewer didn't look like Greg Sestero, and you don't really see Greg Sestero in that movie. So I don't know how much he's actually on screen. I think he's more behind the screen. It's a 30-minute documentary about being... It's called Homeless in America. It should be called Homeless in Los Angeles. And it's really surprising to see Tommy Wiseau going from The Room to this. It's a very nice project in a way, because he's letting the homeless people tell their own story, and also gets interviews with the mayor of Los Angeles, and some other people working with the homeless people. Mostly he just lets the homeless people talk about it, talk about their lives, talk about the abuse or stigma they live under, and how they ended up being homeless. And there are a lot of different people in it: drug addicts, people who actually had quite a career at some point, people who are very eccentric, a lot of really lovable people. And I think it's a very honorable job to do. I don't know if it also feels a bit cheap coming from the guy who made The Room, which is maybe the most narcissistic thing ever to do, to make a movie with yourself as the lead and also directing it and funding it yourself, to just, and then going on to tell a story that's not about yourself at all. But I don't know. I think also one thing that will become clear the more you see of Tommy Wiseau's production is that he has a lot of heart. He wants to help people improve their lives, and help to improve the lives for people, and tell a good message and how to be a good person. I don't know if he necessarily lives up to that message himself, but I don't know. It's difficult for me not to look at this as maybe a project to try to improve his image in a way. After making The Room, that he felt like he had to go in a completely different direction to get some credibility as a director, as a producer, as a human being. So maybe it's not complete. Maybe it's a bit self-serving. I don't know. But sorry, I've already said too much about that. It's actually a decent thing. The only thing I can say about it that makes it actually feel a bit like a Tommy Wiseau film is the sound design is quite similar to The Room, and some of the camera angles, some of the editing decisions are also quite amateurish. But overall, it's actually not a bad film. I don't know why you would watch it though. Maybe to compare it to the situation today, because it's almost 20 years ago. Has the situation improved? I don't think it has. I don't live in LA. I have never been to LA. But from what I can tell, it's actually gone much worse, and a lot of the messages and stories are probably quite relevant today too. So yeah, I know it's a fine little thing, but actually doesn't have much to do with Greg. So that's why we should move on to his next credited role is in a movie I couldn't get my hands on. So I should be very honest with you. I wasn't able to acquire all his movies. I tried and tried and tried, but no matter what I did, I couldn't find it anywhere. I think they are available in America on Amazon, but when I tried to rent them, I was told that I needed not only an American address, but an American bank account. So there was no way I could watch these movies. I don't think they are good. When you look at the reviews, they are actually really, really, really bad. But that being said, I would have wanted to be for this list to be complete, for this viewing to be complete. Alas, it was not possible. Maybe you can find them if you live in America and see them for yourself, and give me a message saying if they actually are as bad as the reviews. And also, for the same reason, his new movie will come out soon. A Tommy Wiseau movie as well, called Big Shark. I haven't seen that. Maybe when this video comes out, it will be out, the movie as well. So you can also check that out. So that means of his entire credited filmography, I haven't seen Alien Presence from 2009, The Pit and the Pendulum from 2009, or Big Shark, which may or may not be out. Also, I didn't include Lukewarm Christian because he is just playing a cameo of himself. So I didn't want to watch an entire movie called Lukewarm Christian for that reason. And also haven't seen any of his television appearances or his web appearances. I'll just list them, you can find them yourself then. He appears in one episode in Days of Our Lives from 2000, never heard of it. 2 episodes as a model in 2006 Fashion House. There is also a pilot for a TV series called The Blessed Ignorance of Men, which from 2013 doesn't seem like it led anywhere, but his name is Mark in that one, so I guess. But I think more famously he's in The Haunting of Bly Manor in 2 episodes from 2020. So yeah, that's all out there. You can see that for yourself if you want to be more of a completionist than I decided to be. So returning to actually the movies I could see, going from The Room. Shit, I didn't even talk about The Room. I'm sorry. The Room 2003. The thing is, I don't want to talk about The Room, but because there are even people who study The Room, like on an academic level, who are much more suited to talk about it, and it's a really weird movie to talk about. And I think most people who listen to this video or see this video knows about The Room and probably nothing else about Greg Sestero. And I'm already wasting too much time saying I won't waste too much time on it. So very briefly, 2003, The Room took a long time to make. It took a lot of money to make for such a terrible movie because it's a very ugly movie. It's a terribly edited movie. The sound design is terrible. The set design is terrible. The acting is abysmal. And it's also the directing and the script that is abysmal. So not all of it is on the actors, and it was such a terrible mess to shoot that a lot of the actors changed throughout the movie. And it's probably the most famous So Bad It's Good film, which also makes it difficult to actually talk about because yes, it's a very entertaining movie. And I would say that anyone who wants to watch it and haven't seen it yet should see it for themselves first before seeing it with an audience. Because the audience has probably seen it before, especially if you go to a cinema. So they will kind of ruin the experience for you. You should definitely watch it alone or maybe with 1 or 2 other people who haven't seen it before. So you can talk about it afterwards. But it's really a movie. The first time you watch it, be silent, just sit and enjoy. When I recently rewatched it was the 3rd time I'd seen it. And I will say, yes, it's still immensely entertaining. It was the first time I saw it with a large group of people. The first time I watched it was with one person who hadn't seen it before. The second time was with a bunch of friends where some had seen it before, some hadn't. But we just kept talking and it really ruined the experience. So that's why small group of people the first time and then maybe a large audience the second time. It's a thing that has to be experienced. But yeah, expect bad lines of dialogue. Expect really weird decisions. One of the academics actually remember seeing a documentary or a video where he talked about The Room. He says the movie is as if an alien tried to write a movie about humans seen from a human perspective, but without any of the knowledge of being human and what that entails. So it's like something that's made by a complete outsider and foreigner to what the person is actually describing and trying to achieve and trying to display. I think that's a very good way to put it. It just feels alien. Now I talked about The Room, where Greg Sestero plays Mark. This is much more disorganized than my other videos. I'm sorry about that. It's a new concept and maybe it will be terrible. So yes, the next time he's on screen is then 6 years later in Alien Presence. He has at least one uncredited role in Accepted from 2006 before that. And then The Pit of the Pendulum from the same year. And then the first time I get to see him again in any of the movies I could find is in 2015. So 12 years after he made The Room, he's in the movie Dude, Bro, Massacre III. This movie is actually better than you might think. So, me being an idiot, I thought maybe I should watch Dude, Bro, Massacre 1 and 2 first. And then I Googled it, and all that came up was 3. And it's because this is a sequel to 2 movies that don't exist. And already then I was kind of hooked. So it is a gore slasher made in the style of the 80s, even shot almost looking like a VHS film. So it's one of those movies that's intentionally bad. The acting is intentionally off. The movie is intentionally stupid. So it's one of those big, how ironic movies. And those can be very hit and miss. And I think this is both. So it opens up with a man who is his therapist. So yeah, a college student. He talks to the therapist about his experiences the last 2 years, where a woman was killed, and then, this is just all exposition told so quickly that I forgot exactly how it goes, and it doesn't really matter too much. But it's basically how one woman or one girl from the school ran around killing all his friends, and then they killed her. But then she comes back from the dead in what's supposedly Bro Massacre II, and kills people again. So they kill her again, but now she's back in Bro Massacre III. Yes. So that just means that all that exposition dialogue is delivered in 5 minutes, maybe. But those 5 minutes are filled with all the goriest death scenes of what is supposedly 2 movies. Meaning it's like having a slasher reel or kill reel from Friday the 13th. It's amazing. It's really, really entertaining. It's over the top. It's just how that thing has to be. So it's a really good way to start out the movie. Funny idea again. Fake sequel. Sure, that actually works quite well because it really acts like it's a sequel. So it acts like you already know the characters he's talking about and are emotionally invested in everything. But then it cuts to the new year where, like a new batch of students. So they are this frat house where Greg Sestero is playing, one called Derek. He's not the one, he's actually unfortunately one of the ones in the frat house who is the least in the movie. But his performance there he really works well as a dude bro, even though he's in his very late 30s at this point while shooting the film. And yes, it's what you would expect. It's people who are going to this almost Crystal Lake camp, this summer place, where they are supposed to party, and it's just, stupid guys being stupid guys, and there's of course a girl who is also getting mixed up with it. And they have to stop this zombie murderer. Oh, I'm not gonna spoil the movie, but the movie has one of the funniest twists I've ever seen in one of these movies that are trying to be bad on purpose. It succeeds in actually doing some things very well, such as a very good ending and a very good opening. The entire middle of the movie, I think it had 30-40 minutes where just between murders, more or less, which just got annoying, because that's when you realize that actually this acting doesn't work well. Their jokes aren't that good. There isn't that much going on. They try to throw in this really weird subplot that doesn't go really anywhere, and it's just, there's a lot of filler in it that doesn't work, but what works in the opening and the ending is very entertaining. So I will definitely recommend this movie. I think of the movies that are intentionally bad, the best one I can think of is Black Dynamite. If you haven't watched that one, it's a blaxploitation movie, or fake blaxploitation movie, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I'm not gonna talk more about that. It's just a quick throwaway line. If you like movies that are so ironic or so intentionally bad, that's probably the best one you can find, at least of the ones I've seen. Kung Pao is a guilty pleasure. I think it's more of a hit and miss with people. But let's not talk about movies that don't have Greg Sestero in it. Let's talk about movies with Greg Sestero in it. I don't have much more to say about this film. Bro Massacre, yeah, it's funny. Watch it. It's not fantastic, but you should have a decent time. Yes. So his next movie is The Disaster Artist, but he doesn't really have much to do with the movie, so I'm not sure how much I should talk about it. It's based on the book he wrote. So one of the questions he got when I saw him live was, how true to the real story is The Disaster Artist, the film? He said the best way he could explain this: in The Disaster Artist, Mark, aka Greg Sestero, wants to be in the room. In real life, Mark did not want to be in the room. So it does change some things a bit, because it has to be a movie, it has to be concise in some ways, and it has to tell a thrilling story. And the thing is, real life, where it was just much worse realized, so it would have been maybe too sadistic or not entertaining enough to show it. It would just be, masochistic even maybe to watch that movie if it had been the real story. But this is still, it still has a lot of the truth, like a lot of the details about how they made the movie. And it's made by James Franco, who plays the lead as well. James Franco as Tommy Wiseau. His brother Dave Franco is playing Greg Sestero. And Greg Sestero does have a small role in it, which is, from what I remember, it's as a casting member of the casting crew. And that's about it. That's actually most of his involvement with the movie. And I can't say much about the film other than it's how The Room was made, more or less, give or take. So all I said about The Room is more or less applicable to this one, only that this one is, of course, a real film, in that it's actually a very well-made movie about a very terribly made movie. And I think it's fantastic. It's really, really good. It's highly entertaining, very uncomfortable at times, and just completely mind-boggling. So if you don't read the book, The Disaster Artist, I would say you should watch the movie at least. I haven't read the book. Maybe I will someday, because the movie is really entertaining in a very different way than The Room is. That's what I will say. The Disaster Artist is very watchable. But I think what is worth talking about much more is a movie that actually came out the same year as The Disaster Artist, 2017, which is Best Friends. And the movie will open up saying it's based on true story or something like that. And I heard the story behind what it was based on with Greg Sestero saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, and I might be getting some details wrong, but that at one point when he was on a road trip with Tommy Wiseau got so convinced that Greg Sestero wanted to kill him that it really soured the relation at that point, and I think they had to part ways for a little while, maybe only a day. I don't forget how long it is, but it's something that Tommy Wiseau just got it in his mind that Greg Sestero was out to cheat him and to murder him and to steal his money, or at least something along those lines. And that made Greg Sestero think, well, what if that was actually the case? What if that was what I was interested in doing? So he got together with 3 other people, one of them being Tommy Wiseau, and decided to make this film. It's in 2 volumes. I will treat it as one movie, but I will also say that the 2 volumes are so tonally different. Plot-wise, tonally, atmosphere, it really feels like 2 different movies, or one movie and then a sequel. It doesn't really feel like one movie, but it's presented as one movie, more or less. So that's how I will evaluate it. And also, Greg Sestero didn't talk much about this when I saw him live, but he did quickly say that, because someone asked how can they start making movies, and he said, well, I just got together 3 or 4 people and made Best Friends. And when I heard that, it explained a lot, because this film has such a small cast. It has so few locations, and it feels off. And I was actually surprised that it was written. Greg Sestero is the only one credited with writing it. He also has some responsibility in producing it. But it actually felt like a Tommy Wiseau movie, in that the lines of dialogue are often so terrible they are on par with The Room. It feels supernatural in the same way, or non-human. And although the main premise of the movie is okay, it's just told in such a funky way that it's a very difficult movie to talk about. I think that's actually what it all boils down to, that these movies are things that can't really be explained. They had to be experienced, and then they're talked about by the people who experience them. Because, yes, the lines of dialogue in this movie are all over the place. It opens up with Greg Sestero playing a bum who wakes up with blood on his shirt. It's never explained. I think the only reason why they do that, I thought it was to add a mysterious background, but it was more to say that Greg Sestero has done things in his past and then he tries to better himself and have a new chance on life that Tommy Wiseau then gives him. And it's not really used to anything in Volume 1, but in Volume 2 it does come back with Tommy Wiseau saying, oh, I remember, I shouldn't do an impression because I can't, but I remember you, when you first came to me, you had blood on your shirt. I know you did something, but I was willing to forgive you. That's what Tommy says. I paraphrase, of course. Anyway, Tommy Wiseau is running this morgue where he hires Greg Sestero to help him. Greg Sestero asks him for some help, and Tommy Wiseau is at first reluctant, but Greg Sestero just pushes a bit and says he will really accept almost no pay, so he's getting a job at that place. And it turns out that Tommy Wiseau is also making, I don't remember if it's because he made death masks that he has this experience, but he can make fairly lifelike masks of people, rubber masks, that also look quite weird. And honestly, they are extremely uncanny and scary, but they're meant to be nice things. So I think right after meeting Greg Sestero, the reason why I say I think is because the Best Friends has no sense of time and place. So it could be the very next day, it could be some weeks later, but Tommy Wiseau makes a mask for Greg Sestero's character of Greg Sestero's face. I don't know when he made the cast, if he made the cast, he just made it from memory, but first of all, it actually doesn't look like him that much. It's meant to be a perfect image of him, so much so that it can be used later to imitate him. But when I watched it, I didn't think it looked like him. It's just a very scary, creepy thing to do. And I'm not sure if the movie thinks it is. I mean, if it's meant to be the scary or creepy, or if it actually is meant to be nice. Later on, it's used in almost a horror-like fashion, but it's also used to tell a message, like this message of how you can correct yourself and how to live a proper life. So I'm not sure if it's meant to be as scary as it is, or meant to just, that it's when Greg Sestero looks at someone wearing the mask, is looking into himself. I think that's what it's supposed to be used as, but it's very uncomfortable and weird. Anyway, so what happens is that Greg Sestero realizes that Tommy Wiseau has saved all these, I think it's fillings for teeth from all the people he has processed. And Greg Sestero realizes is actually quite valuable, so they start selling all these fillings or implants or whatever it is that they're selling. And then when it comes to payment, Tommy Wiseau withholds Greg Sestero's payment, which makes Greg Sestero quite uncomfortable. He doesn't understand why he feels cheated, that he came up with this idea. It might be Tommy Wiseau's possessions that were sold, but or somewhat possessions, things that are at least at his office that were sold. But it was Greg Sestero's idea to do it, and Tommy Wiseau was actually very reluctant in the beginning, so he feels cheated. And at this point, Greg Sestero has his own place to live. A lot of this was helped by Tommy Wiseau giving him a job, so he actually has gotten back on track. He started this relationship with this woman he meets at the bar, telling her that he's in the gold business. She's a very attractive lady. A very, very bad actress. I'm sad to say she's really not good, but she's an attractive lady, so that's why she's in the movie, because she has to be attractive. And Tommy Wiseau says, sorry, I'm trying again to make the fucking impression. I can't. So he tells her that he should stay away from her. She's bad news. She's a gold digger, which, that's why I thought the movie was written by Tommy Wiseau, because Tommy Wiseau doesn't understand subtlety. He doesn't understand metaphors, or keeping it simple, yet also, not writing it on the wall. Instead, it's just, he tells her he's in the gold business. They are selling fillings, gold fillings, and she's a gold digger for wanting him. I mean, it's just as blunt as it can be. So it does feel like it's one of those typical Tommy Wiseau message stories. Be true to yourself, be kind to your friends, give people chances, but also be respectful for the chances people give you. Don't betray each other, be honest. That's very important. Be honest. Be loyal is also very important. Loyalty is very, very important to Tommy Wiseau, at least based on his movies. That's what this is all about, this setup. Because, yes, I think even more than the 1.5 hours, and what happens in this 1.5 hour is nothing. It's just weird conversations, them selling the gold teeth, and then that relationship building between him and the girl. And then the girl convinces him that he should take back the money that Tommy Wiseau didn't pay him. And it's also seen that Tommy Wiseau talks to this weird guy in this weird dodgy place, and he has these phone messages that he's owing money and all those things. So Greg Sestero thinks he's involved with the mafia, or at least involved in some kind of crime and in trouble. So he thinks that he's just trying to cheat him out of this money, and that he's just a bad person, bad character that he needs to get rid of or away from. So him and his girlfriend hatch a plan again. She naggers him on, obviously a bad influence, to steal the money. And Tommy Wiseau's character is hiding the money in an ATM that apparently has the most insane luck. Nobody can unlock that ATM with all the money in it for whatever reason. But it has all this money in it. And in order to get it, they need the key from Tommy Wiseau. And they do steal it. And they make this weird plan where they're going to listen to, I think it's Guns N' Roses playing at this arena. Only that the arena, they didn't do the research, so they make fake tickets for this place, but the place no longer exists, and Tommy Wiseau knows that. He goes along, they get him drunk. They're standing at a cliff overlooking the sea, and has this huge debate where Greg Sestero tells him he feels betrayed. Tommy Wiseau is asking him why he betrays him, having been such a good person to him, because I think the movie thinks Tommy Wiseau has been better than he actually is presented as in the movie, which is another weird decision, because Tommy Wiseau is not shown as the absolute best character in the film. Just a mildly good character, and that's why this entire setup doesn't make sense. You also don't, they describe each other as best friends, and at this point you don't know. I think they've been knowing each other for 3 months. There's a clue in the second film about them having known each other for a few months. So this is a really, really short period of time where all this happens in, which makes it a very uncredible story. Again, it's really not well told, and it wasn't well developed. It's just a mess all over the place. And it ends with Tommy Wiseau falling off the cliff. I don't think he's pushed off. That's not how I remember the scene. But at the same time, Greg Sestero doesn't seem distraught that he fell off the cliff. And Greg Sestero gets the key, but the key doesn't fit the ATM. That's at least how I understood it. The movie is all over the place. That's volume 1. Volume 2 is a completely different film in that it picks up at that cliffhanger, and with them trying to escape with the ATM because they can't get the money. I think actually all this with the ATM happens in volume 2. So they try to escape. They are almost pulled over by a policeman. He instead allows them to go for it. Makes no sense, really. And we already get an idea that this woman might be having some fake IDs or is living under a fake identity, and they show up at this, supposedly the one who's going to help them with opening the safe lives in the middle of nowhere in, I think, Nevada or New Mexico or something. And he's supposed to be her uncle, I think, and he's just this really big guy. He looks like a maybe former professional football player or something. So this elderly guy who's really buffed, shown almost all the time without wearing much clothes, and always talking about fucking. He has all the really bad dad jokes you can think of and all the very sexual jokes you can think of. And he just says them over and over. And in the meantime, someone in the local community say they recognize the girl and that she's apparently wronged him in some way. And it all leads up to this moment where Greg Sestero realizes that he has been bamboozled. It turns out that his gold-digging girlfriend is actually in a relationship with that guy, the older guy, and that they have been doing this for years, which doesn't make sense because she's actually very young at this point. Again, no concept of time or space, so we have no idea how many they've done this to, how long of a period this has gone on for. But yeah, she seduces man, they take their money, and then they kill them. That's not a terrible premise, I guess, but when all this happens, when this reveal happens, it happens around the same time as... No, sorry, a scene that happens before that is the people who recognize her try to kill her, but do it in a very inefficient way, and someone then kills them. We don't see who. But obviously, it turns out that one of the guys who wanted to kill her, she was involved with the disappearance of one of his loved ones, which, she actually deserves to die. Does she die in the movie? No, she doesn't. And that's, sorry for already spoiling it, she does not get her comeuppance. Not really, and that actually really frustrated me. These movies are very sexist in a way. She's the only female character in the movie. She's portrayed in this very bad, stereotypically bad gold-digging way, like this being manipulative woman who is very cold and very evil. And at the same time, everybody else get their comeuppance. She doesn't, not really. And I think it's because, she's a woman, we can't treat her bad. But she's involved with multiple murders. So why don't they actually... If she didn't die, they're at least having her arrested or something. But the movie doesn't really go anywhere really with that character, and that really annoyed me. Tommy Wiseau's movies are generally very sexist. I think that unfortunately, this, not even being a Tommy Wiseau movie, this has elements of that sexism that really is really unfortunate. And yes, so there's a showdown. Tommy Wiseau. This is where the movie actually gets interesting. So in all this period, in Volume 2, we keep flashing forward and backward to Greg Sestero being locked up in a basement with Tommy Wiseau. And he's also in a barn, also with Tommy Wiseau in the barn, sometimes wearing the mask, sometimes wearing no mask, but most of the time wearing a knight's helmet. And all this time, I actually thought these were dream sequences or hallucinations, because Greg Sestero feels guilty, because all what's happening here are conversations about Greg Sestero's choices in life, and how Tommy Wiseau is this amazing person, and how Greg Sestero just did him wrong, and that Greg Sestero should be ashamed of himself. I mean, this story is so hammered in. The message of the story is so hammered in. It's really, really just repeated over and over, and it's just way too much. But it actually turns out that this is probably not even hallucination. This is taking place at the end of the movie. Well, because Tommy Wiseau shows up in a full Ned Kelly outfit. He has this medieval knight helmet on it, like this crusader helmet, and wears this padded armor. And just shows up with, I think he's even having this, not Luke or Walter, I think it's a Walter PPK or something, that he just shows up with and starts shooting these people and saves him. I guess to make sure that Greg Sestero understands that he was not out to cheat him, and that he should have treated him better, and if they are friends, they should treat each other as friends. But he's doing it in such a poor way that he actually never explains to Greg Sestero's character what was going on. Whenever Greg Sestero questions Wiseau's motivations, or says, "Oh, I have proof that this guy wants money," or whatever, Tommy Wiseau just laughs at him in his very typical laughter. "Oh, you have no clue." I did it again, sorry. It's really just... this is one of those movies where people talk, but without having conversations, and nothing feels real. It feels so inhuman, so alien, so odd. And at the very end, we realize the reason why Tommy Wiseau was withholding money from Greg Sestero's character was to spend that money on buying him a house. And the dodgy person we saw earlier was a real estate agent. What did he tell him? And it's not right to withhold your money anyway, even if you want to use them for good. It's not right to just buy a house somewhere that the person has never agreed to get. I mean, there's so much about this movie that's just all over the place and terrible, and I've been talking about it, for 20 minutes now? It's just, wow. And I'm sad to say, this is one of those terrible movies. I'm not even sure it's fair to say terrible. It's one of those art movies that are not really so terrible it's good. It's not funny in the room way. It is sincere. It's not trying to be bad. It's trying to be good, which I think is it's important for So Bad It's Good movies to try to be good, like intentionally good, and then fail. And that's what this movie is doing, but it's just not interesting enough. It had one moment that made me laugh out loud, but that was it. The rest of it, I was just mind-boggled. I was trying to put the pieces together and have an idea. I was just so confused. Not just about the plot, but about all the decisions, the writing decisions, the directing decisions, the acting. So much about Best Friends doesn't work. Should you see it? I don't know. I think if you're so fascinated with Tommy Wiseau and also Greg Sestero that you do like The Room a lot, and do like some of his other movies, and just interested in filmmaking do's and don'ts, and especially don'ts, I think this could be an experience for you. But because there are two movies, and I think altogether they're more than 3 hours, I don't think it's worth watching. So yes, if you're curious and can spend that time, and if you're good at second screening, go ahead, I guess. Go ahead. It's really weird. It's just, yeah. Wow, I still have, 3-4 movies to talk about? Damn. Wow. So, no, I'm really happy that I got this off my chest, because I don't know anyone who's watched this movie, and just having seen it, I'm all over the place. I feel like I've been chewed up and spat out and sat on, and then shoved back the wrong way in the wrong hole, and then, of course, that creates complications in the body, so it ends up ejected again. And that's how my mind felt. after watching that film. I think the movie made me stupid. Well, before going to his next video, I actually realized there's something that I forgot to mention before. One of the movies, and I can't figure out if it is a movie that has actually been made and released, or if it never made it past the pilot, or if it's meant to be a TV series. I've read different things, but Tommy Wiseau wanted to make an animated science fiction space exploration movie / show called Space World. And from what I could find, there's only a 5-6 minute long, almost showreel, or not really a trailer, not really a pilot, just forgot the technical term, but something that showcases what the series is about, or movie is about, or whatever, but it doesn't seem to have been actually made, or maybe it has, it's just not available for anywhere. But yeah, in that one, Greg Sestero plays this robot thing. Honestly, I don't think it's a terrible premise, and I kind of hope that this, if it hasn't been completed, then I hope it is finished and that it will be made public soon, because I would be interested in watching that. I don't think it will be amazing, but it actually looked okay. It looked like something that, a concept that could actually work. Oh, concept art. No, sorry. It's not just concept art. That's not the word. Anyway, back to those that actually were finalized, those movies that were made. In 2020, Greg Sestero is in the movie Cyst. Cyst is a nice, low-budget horror movie made in the vein of the 1950s, 1960s science fiction or science scare. You know, back then, horror movies were usually about science gone wrong, that the man-made horrors of the Second World War and of nuclear arms race and the space race and all that, it went into horror, so people were no longer that much afraid of vampires or whatever. They were afraid of giant ants or radioactivity or all these things. So this movie is made in the same way, that it's science gone wrong. So the lead is played by this lady who works at this clinic. It's I guess it's a dermatologist. It's a place where they remove cysts. They're in the name. That's what they do. They remove cysts. So she's working with this doctor who turns out to be a mad scientist trying to get a patent running for a machine to remove cysts with laser. It is taking place in what is presumably the 1960s. So all this technology is, of course, a bit primitive and everything. With it being set in the 1960s, it doesn't do much with that setting. There are a lot of women in the movie. There are different ethnicities in the movie. Well, no, there are white people and African Americans in it. And they don't do much with it. There's not much of a hint of the sexism that would have gone on in that time. There's not much hint of the racism that might have gone on. But it doesn't do anything with these things, really. The only thing you could see as potentially a sexist commentary is how the doctor treats the nurse, which is he fires her in front of everyone, but without really calling it that he's firing her. He just treats her with utter disrespect, and it actually leads to a lot of that. This movie has a lot of comedy in it, and most of it works, and a lot of it is gross out comedy because it cysts. So it sprays all this goo over her multiple times, and yes, it works. It's one of those situations where, okay, had she just moved out of the way, it would have happened, but it's still funny. I think he's sadistic. He delights himself in covering her with goo, with this material from the cysts, but that's about it. And he just seems like he's a bad guy. He's a very self-absorbed mad scientist guy. And so I'm not even sure it's supposed to be sexism or if it's just him being an asshole. But anyway, so Greg Sestero works together with these two people who show up for the patent office to see the experiment. It turns out that the mad scientist has cultivated a big cyst on, I think it's his secretary or something, someone who's around him. This movie is entertaining, but it's not told very well, unfortunately. The information isn't really presented well in the film, and it doesn't really matter that much. But he has cultivated this cyst, huge cyst on his back that's just disgusting. He's done that by infecting, he injects it with something that makes it grow. And then to demonstrate the power of his invention, because at first it fails to start up, and then the people go to have lunch, and then they come back for a second chance for him to show it, and he just jams that thing into it. And instead of removing it, it makes it come alive, and it starts eating people and starts killing them off in these gross ways. Again, a lot of gross out humor, a lot of humor that's also just not gross out and funny. Some entertaining scenes, and the movie is actually quite beautiful. Nothing special, just it's a good looking movie. The sets are not too convincing, but it doesn't matter that much. Again, it doesn't have much. The geography of it is a bit over the place. You don't really know where things are, which matter a lot, because this is a movie where 95% of it takes place in the same location, or even more than 95% of it. So it's really important that it's well established, and it isn't, unfortunately. But yes, then it becomes this creature feature with this cyst that keeps growing, and then them trying to stop it. It's a neat little film. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I think it's a good movie to watch with a bunch of friends. Maybe get some drinks. It's not amazing. It's nice. It's decent. It's better than a lot of horror movies these days. But it has a lot of problems with how it's made, as I already described. It's just that the pros of it outweigh the cons, and I can definitely recommend it. And although Greg Sestero isn't given much to do in the movie, it actually is probably his best acted role. Yes, I would say it's his best acted role. And then the next movie is Infrared from 2022. It's a very bad horror movie. It's one of those found footage, handheld camera, often shot in infrared, about a ghost hunting YouTube channel. And also, there's also I think they also have a real show in it. It has all the bad tropes of modern horror, with jump scares and bad effects and those weird big eyes and everything. And I think it's even worse than most of those terrible teenage jump scare movies, in that it actually it doesn't even have that many jump scares. It's just a lot of build up for nothing. So it's the haunting of a high school, where Greg Sestero is then the caretaker of that high school. He's not really there that often, but he's the one with the key that they have to get permission from to film there and to see if there are ghosts there. And Greg Sestero is he's playing this he's a bit weird in this movie. He's a weird character in it. And again, his performance here is not that terrible. It's off, but it's supposed to be off. And he's just being a bit naive. And so his performance is the best thing about this movie. So at the very end of the movie, it turns out that actually he is the antagonist of the movie. There is a ghost, but he's also seeking revenge or something. I forgot why, but he locks up the people inside with the ghost, and the ghost kills them after the movie ends because they don't have the budget to show them dying. And the only thing I liked about this movie, and I think you might even warrant, if you can find it for free, find the last 5 minutes of the movie where Greg Sestero gives the weirdest line I think I've ever heard in a movie. And I really hope that this is not how the movie was written, how the script was written. I hope it was just him improvising, because it would make it all so much better. I will not be able to do it justice, but the line is so weird. Oh, you wanted that big ending, that glorious ending to your movie. You wanted that big finale. I'll give you a big finale. And he says, oh, go in there. There'll even be food there. There'll be filet mignon. And you have to see how he delivers that line. It's just the most unnatural line. He's this maniac, not even really hiding the fact that he has ill intentions, because he's holding them at gunpoint. But, telling them that, oh, no, don't expect anything bad when you enter the room. Expect filet mignon. There's something about that line and the way it's delivered that just really made my day. But everything else about the movie is terrible, and I shouldn't spend more time on it. So, we have arrived at the grand finale. Miraclevalley. I feel very privileged about this film, in that I was in a situation where we could ask any questions about the movie you wanted to and get any answer. I therefore know what's intended and what's not intended, what was done on purpose and what wasn't done on purpose, and also a bit of the other stories behind the scenes, which makes me qualified to say some of the things and make some of the points I want to make. Because if I had not known this, I really wouldn't have known if it's a movie that was intentionally bad or if it's just unintentionally bad. But saying it's unintentionally bad is also not doing it good. So it has a solid premise. It has a very simple but actually quite decent premise. It has some good ideas. It has some good scenes, and it has some actually quite amazing acting at times. But then most of the other actors are terrible or just below mediocre. The direction of them, the direction is bad. The lines of dialogue is often bad, in that, again, not really how people talk way, where it just feels, oh, this was written. This is not how people would actually talk. It has some of the biggest issues with it is, again, something I return to time and time again here. It has no sense of geography. It has no sense of time and place. I'll bring that up again very soon because, quick summary, it was shot in southern New Mexico, from what I remember. Might have been southern Nevada, but I think it's southern New Mexico. And it also is where it's taking place. And it's in this middle of nowhere. This photographer guy is driving to this cabin. Yes, the cabin in the middle of nowhere, or lodge in the middle of nowhere, with his girlfriend, and they are having a troubled relationship, obviously. And the reason why he's going there is because he's obsessed with taking a photo of this bird. It's more important than his relationship, and it's more important than anything else in the world for him. The girl is obviously going through a phase. You see some later in the movie, you see how she looked a few months or even years back, and how she looks now. So she's taking more of a gothic face. She doesn't look like a goth, but some of her makeup kind of does. The background on her phone is a bit edgy, gothy, emo-y, maybe even. And yes, so they have a troubled relationship. They arrive at this lodge, and it turns out that he invited another couple to stay there. Sorry, I forgot. The photographer is played by Greg Sestero. I think I forgot to say that. He is the lead in this movie. At least one of the leads in this movie. His girlfriend is arguably the other lead. There are two leads in the film. But yeah, he's playing this asshole douchebag boyfriend. And I think Greg Sestero realized that with his looks and with his and this is where I was afraid I would come off as mean. Greg Sestero is not the most talented actor, so he has a limited range of believable performances. Like he can only do so many things or have so many characteristics that he can deliver in a believable format, which is weird because he's actually really good at playing a douchebag. Even though in real life he seems like a very nice guy, but he's really good at playing a douchebag. So the movie knows, at least he knew his own abilities well enough to give him a character that's not too complex and that it doesn't require too much talent to play. And that he pulled it off. It's not a great performance, but it's a decent performance. It's okay. It works. I can't say the same for the girl. She's given a bit too much to do in the movie, and she just doesn't have the talent for it. Or that maybe the direction was off, but there are some lines where it really loses me believing in her as a character. But yes, going back, so they arrive at the lodge. It turns out he arranged with this other couple to be there as well without telling the girl. And this other couple is this guy who is a music producer, I think. He works in music, that's all we know. And then he has this stunning girlfriend who's played by the stunning girlfriend in Best Friends, the gold digger, who, again, she's a bit better in this movie, but she's really not a good actress. She's, again, playing an asshole, and she can at least do that convincingly. Immediately, you don't buy them as a couple. Then you realize, okay, he works in music, maybe he has a lot of money, maybe she's a gold digger, maybe she sleeps around, and it turns out that all that is true. You also, from the second, you don't buy Greg Sestero and his girlfriend as a couple because they seem to hate each other. The movie also addresses that it seems that every time Greg's character meets a woman, he always dates young women. So the movie establishes that he's older than her, even though he does look young. Dates college-age girls or even younger. And the second a woman wants to connect with him on a deeper emotional level, he ends the relationship. So when you hear that, unfortunately, that's, I think, almost halfway through the movie that this is established. It's a bit too late. At least it explains it, but at that time I'd been sitting there not buying the relationship for a while. And as the movie goes along, the relationship deteriorates more and more, and that's where another element of the movie comes in, because the movie is about a cult. And it doesn't hide away from that fact. So the cult belongs to this miraclevalley, this very small town nearby. It's not really established how big it is, but the movie opens with this African American lady arriving at that town, and then she's abducted. And it's also established that it takes place in modern time. but the town is frozen in time. All the cars from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So it's already established this is a weird place, and they have a run-in with two bikers on their way to the lodge. But it then turns out that one of the bikers is the local priest who runs this cult. And that local priest is played by the douchebag boyfriend from Best Friends. So the guy who is really buff and turns out to be a murderer. He's in this movie. And I must say, when I first saw him appear, I was really afraid that this movie would be terrible. But his performance is actually what makes this movie worth watching. I'll talk about that a bit later, because in the beginning he's just a bit charismatic. Just so he lures her into joining their meetings, the cult meetings, and she gets more and more into the idea of joining them, and they have all this. They talk about how important blood is to them, and it turns out that she had an abortion, and he kind of forced her to have an abortion. She didn't want to have an abortion. I mean, Greg Sestero forced her to have an abortion, and the priest is using that against them. He pretends to want to heal a relationship, but he wants to tear them apart. So what he does is that he tells Greg Sestero that he was the one that spotted that bird Greg Sestero wants to take a picture of, and they take him out in the middle of nowhere. And this is where you really get an idea that time and place is not established, because they take this long-ass boat ride across this big lake to drop him off so he can take a picture of this bird. And in the meantime, they give them this thing, the sunscreen, and he puts it on his arms. I don't know why you only put sunscreen on your arms, but that's what he does. That starts making his arms itch, and he finds the bird and manages to take a shot of the bird, but is then surprised by some of the villagers. Some of the villagers you also saw at the cult meeting, and he falls down and collapses. But he has actually cheated with the girlfriend of his friend, and the preacher has taken pictures of it. So while he's up there taking pictures, he's spending time on the boat with the girl, showing her that Greg Sestero is cheating on her. So then she decides that she doesn't want to pick him up, which was the preacher's plan all along, because the preacher then convinces her that her blood has healing powers, which it has. It actually shows in the movie it has healing powers. So this is not even nonsense. It has healing powers. And that's the whole cult is about, using blood for medicinal purposes and for magical purposes. In the meantime, a group of people show up to this group of friends that are there in the middle of nowhere. And all these are members from the church, and they're all... That's another credit I'll give for the movie. The casting is amazing. All the characters they have in the movie look weird and interesting in their own way. So even if their acting might not be great, and I would say some of the directing as well is not great. So... like that uncanny, always smiling face, always being too nice. They really overdo it in this movie, unfortunately. Subtlety would have the scenes much more effective. I think this movie is someone having watched Invitation and then tried to do it in more of a 70s, 80s cult slasher way, which really doesn't work, because The Invitation works because of its subtlety and because it takes such a time to build up the story, its mystery and everything. It's a fantastic movie, and like the devil is in the detail. This one is just all over the place. Greg Sestero said he was very inspired by 70s movies like The Hills Have Eyes. I must admit, watching this movie, I didn't really see the 70s that much in it, other than maybe some things that actually took place, like the Jonestown or some aspects of the cults of the 70s in this movie. But I don't think the movie making, the filmography, the filming, anything of that really, or even the themes in it, really, aside from being a cult, doesn't feel that 70s. It feels campy in the 70s way, but aside from that, not really. Anyway, the cult shows up and kills the people and cut their blood, drain their blood, drink their blood. And the girl is then introduced to this cult in this way, and she reluctantly agrees to join them, but it also turns out that they lied to her, because Greg Sestero shows up at the time these people are killed again. For what we know, he has been gone for 3 or 4 hours. So how he found his way home in this place that doesn't seem to have any satellite connection or phone connection, because otherwise, if it had, it would have been used more in the movie. Nobody calls for help. Nobody does anything like that. So the movie has kind of established the premise that this exists at a place where technology that's too far away from urban life, that technology no longer works. But even then, he finds the way home back by foot, not just back to the lodge, but also back through the main, like the butchery of the evil people. It's just nothing is established, and then when they take these bodies and he hides among the bodies, so he's driven away. So this butcher place again. So he's driven back to where the dead people are sent, slaughterhouse, I guess, by car, a place he just walked from. Then there he has a showdown with a butcher. He doesn't really pick up any weapons, which I don't understand why he wouldn't do. He then finds the African American lady from the beginning who's been tied to a chair and they've been running blood experiments on her to find like the perfect blood sample. He helps free her with a crowbar. And then she escapes, but she doesn't take the crowbar with her, so she confronts one of the cultists without having a weapon, and the cultist has a knife. And then she takes down the cultist, and then uses her knife. So now she has a knife and no crowbar. She never had the crowbar, even though she should have brought it. But then in one of the very last scenes of the movie, she has the crowbar again. So that's what I was talking about before. So one thing is the sense of time and place. The other one is there's no continuity in it. There are so many continuity errors that it actually messed with my experience watching the movie. And that towards the end it gets worse and worse because the cult has a big scientist compound. It has the butcher shop, the butcher shop. It has wherever that woman was kept. It has the lake and it has the lodge. Those are the locations. And people are seemingly able to, by foot, by motorcycle, and by car, show up at one place to the other in 5 minutes. And this is in the middle of the night. There's virtually no street light. There's no reason people should be able to find their way around in the dark. There's no satellite, as we have more or less established in the movie. So it makes no sense that people not only know how to find their way. One thing, of course, the cultists know, but the protagonists are foreign to these lands. So they don't know where anything is. So they should not be able to find their way around. They should be lost as all hell. They are not. And again, they are able to show up conveniently where they are needed within 4 or 5 minutes of where they should have been the scene before, even though that might be logically, since someone would have to drive a car there, it might be many kilometers away. It's so poorly made in this way, and at the end, it's just everybody shows up where they need. Like he's in the laboratory with his doctor and the preacher, but then they realize that Greg Sestero has escaped, so they go out to hunt him down. And while they're away, they just conveniently leave the computer open. And they just has this big folder, just, like evidence. It should have written evidence or foul play or something, because he clicks the folder and finds a folder with her name in it, a subfolder. And it turns out that they've been spying on her for a long time. It turns out that the lady who treated her after the abortion, or the nurse walking around with her after the abortion, is one of the cultists. And it had the biggest unintentional laughter. Because, again, this movie was made by Greg Sestero to be a serious movie. It was not meant to be... There were jokes in it, but most of it was intended to be serious. So it was meant to be a serious horror movie. Campy, but serious. So I don't think this was intentional, but the entire audience laughed at that review. So yeah, that was one of the best moments in the movie and also one of the worst at the same time. And she then turns her back on them, so they lock her up, suspend her from chains in this abandoned nowhere. So she has to be freed by Greg Sestero and an African-American lady. And I really don't want to talk about the ending that much because it's such a mess. But what I do want to end it on is the performance by the preacher. Because Greg Sestero said that they didn't really write lines for him, as far as I understood it. Or if they wrote lines, they just gave him complete freedom to do with them whatever he wanted. So they just told him to have fun with the movie. And boy, does he. That's why he works. He's just insanity, but charismatic insanity, dialed up to 11. It even has Resident Evil-ish moments where he injects himself with blood. It becomes almost Hulk-like, only not visibly, only he gets the strength of Hulk, but without showing it in special effects, because that would have been too expensive, I guess. But he does run around, again, bare chest, because he has a nice body. He wants to show it off. Sure, it works. But he has so much fun in the movie. He chews the scenery. He is giving it 110%, and he is honestly the reason why I can recommend the movie, because the scenes where he is in, and he's in many scenes, are so insanely entertaining that it makes it all worth it. And also, if you sit with a bunch of friends and get drunk, or probably drunk, you can probably also laugh at all the continuity errors. You can laugh at how poorly made a lot of it is. You can enjoy the things that are actually good, because there are good things about the movie. But I don't know. I can't recommend to watch it alone. Definitely. I think that's why I felt really weird about making this video. Because Greg Sestero is a person I like. Without knowing him personally, he's a person who seemingly is a lovable person. So I would wish him a good career. But so far, when he has done something that's good, he either doesn't have a big role in it, or is good for the wrong reasons. Unintentionally so bad it's good. He's 44 now. He has time to grow. I don't know if he will get there, or if he should just embrace it. I think the trouble with the problem with him maybe trying to embrace it is that then he would end up making, like, after Tommy Wiseau realized that he could not be a serious director or actor, and just started making so ironic movies, like so trying intentionally to make bad movies, they are just actually bad. And I think that would be the danger of Greg Sestero, realizing that he actually works better at making so bad they're good movies, or just so weird they are watchable movies. So if he tries to make them intentionally, he won't succeed. So maybe you should just continue trying to make. I really want to watch more of his movies, because he has a lot of good ideas. He makes movies, for better or worse, on the like that you haven't seen before. They are different. They are not like movies you've seen before. I would argue. I could be wrong, but I don't think you've seen movies like that before. I think for that reason, he's a very interesting director and writer and producer. I think he should hopefully get the money to hire better people. He should have people proofread, people checking for continuity errors, because the problem of time and place in this movie frustrated me, and really is what doesn't work well about the movie. I think had those things been better established, more of its mistakes or shortcomings would have been acceptable than they are. So he should get a better team, better access, and should also maybe accept smaller roles for himself. I think he works better as the director, or as the producer, or as a writer for the movies, than he does as an actor. Although he's nice in the small roles, so I don't know if there would be any reason for him to listen to my ideas, because I don't know how well my Miraclevalley is actually doing. I couldn't find much information about that. Bestfriends, I don't think it did very well. I'm not even sure if it had any real theatrical releases. It might have had. If it did, I will put in some information here about that, correcting myself. So I think he lacks the proper funding, and then maybe some people on the money side or distribution side having a say. He should have the flexibility to do what he does, but also be restrained a bit more and have more of a professional input in turn choices of the cast and the crew and, editing. I don't know. This is a very different video from the other ones I made. And I don't know. I don't feel that comfortable with it, as it feels more like a personal video. Not necessarily personal attack, but I'm talking about a person who has tried to make it in the industry for over 20 years and hasn't really succeeded, if we are being honest. He has had successes, but even those successes were only limited successes, and usually not in ways that he would probably have hoped for. I don't think anyone who inspires to be a director or actor or writer wants to be famous for being in one of the worst movies in the world and being associated with one of the worst directors in the world. So it does feel weird talking about Greg Sestero in this way. But yes, I really hope to see more. I'm looking forward to seeing Big Shark when it comes out. I hope Space World materializes. I think just to end it the way I usually end it, with what I can recommend and what I can't recommend. The Room, of course. Disaster Artist, definitely. Bro Massacre, yeah. Decent recommendation, not the highest recommendation. The same for Cyst. It's just a film that works as a low-budget, simple horror movie. a creature feature and gross out comedy. I guess it's a horror comedy more, not just a horror. And I would say that if your interest was piqued by what I said about about Best Friends, if you're really curious about watching something that is in so many ways defies how movies, especially Hollywood movies, are made, defies logic in many ways, defies general established concepts of good writing and good acting, then yes, watch it. It's off balance in a way that is similar to The Room, but also not similar in terms of entertainment value. And it's definitely also better. The production is higher and it has more talent behind it, if you can say that. So I don't know who I can recommend it to, but I know there are people out there who will enjoy it or who will at least be intrigued by it. And then finally, Miraclevalley. I can recommend it for one performance. And I can recommend it in one given sitting, as I said, with friends, probably drunk. And I think that's how I should conclude this video. I don't feel accomplished. I don't feel like I've achieved anything here. I feel a bit disturbed, and I have this nagging feeling that I can't describe. But like something is wrong, that I shouldn't have done this. But I also don't think, I think I did my best to do the subject matter that is Greg Sestero justice. But without having done enough research or enough in-depth analysis and storytelling to maybe really do him justice. So yes, if you're interested in reading reviews instead of just listening to it here, I do have their Letterboxd profile called The Robot Quits. A link will be in the description. So yes, if you want to look up what I wrote about these movies, you can find it there. And I will then leave you with a goodbye.